Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the book club. This Sunday, we have Ravi Sonalkar presenting what I consider and what I think you will all agree is a very important book. Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari is a book that has been a talking point for quite a while now. And I think it is indeed high time that the book club heard various opinions and talked about it. So Ravi, I'm very grateful to you that you offered to present this book, and we're all looking forward to this. Now, Ravi is not a stranger to the book club. He has presented before, so I'm very happy that he has come today to present once more. I'm sure this is going to be a very rewarding session, certainly stimulating as the book is. And I'm sure lots of people will want to have their say. Now, Ravi is what, as he himself puts it, an engineer's engineer. So he is absolutely in the engineering field. And how wonderful to know that engineers also read. Of course, there are lots of you present today who prove that point. Yes, engineers do read, engineers do think. So Ravi, over to you. Let's see what you have made of Sapiens and what you would like to say about it.
Okay, I would request everyone to shut their videos and mute themselves. You can keep your videos on, but mute yourself. And please do not interfere. Do not let other sounds come in. Thank you all. It's yours now, Ravi. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Ravi Sonalkar, and I'll be sharing my views on the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. This book is what is called a large history. The honest fact is, from the first time I read this book, it left a very, very deep impression on me, and I guess has greatly influenced my thinking. The other books which have affected me in the same way over the years have been Exodus and Atlas Shrugged. After reading this book for the first time, I started wondering about things we call eternal truths as handed down through generations, and have since tried to reconcile them with the history of humankind. The intrigue and discovery in this process has been multifold. And therefore, I feel this book should be read as widely as possible. And this is the reason you find me sharing it with you today. The book covers a vast landscape. And hence, my first dilemma was whether I should talk about the intrigue and discovery to people who may have already read the book, or give a basic introduction to the book so as to get more people interested in reading it. I have decided to go with the latter, and therefore most of what I say today will bring all of you closer to the simple thought process of this book, which, when applied to the natural and social evolution of humans, brings home the essence of this book. Rest assured, the question and answers would be a good time to go into the intrigues and discovery and discussion about this book. About the book and the author. Fire gave us power. Farming made us hungry for more. Money gave us purpose, and science has made us deadly. This is the thrilling account of our extraordinary history, from insignificant apes to the rulers of the world. In this bold and provocative book, Yuval Harari explores who we are, how we got here, and where we are going. Yuval Noah Harari is an Israeli public intellectual, historian, and a professor in the Department of History at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. A Brief History of Humankind is a book by Yuval Noah Harari, first published in Hebrew in Israel in 2011. Based on a series of lectures that Harari taught at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It was then published in English in 2014. The book, focusing on Homo sapiens, surveys the history of humankind starting from the Stone Age and going up to the 21st century. This account is situated within a framework that intersects the natural sciences with the social sciences. Popular reception. First published in Hebrew in 2011 and then in English in 2014, the book has been translated into over 60 languages. On the Goodreads, the book is rated 4.4 out of 5 according to more than 600,000 reviews. It also made the New York Times bestseller list and won the National Library of China's Wenjin Book Award for the best book published in 2014. Writing 4 years after its English language publication, Alex Preston wrote in The Guardian that Sapiens has become a publishing phenomenon with wild success, symptomatic of a broader trend towards intelligent, challenging nonfiction. Concurrently, The Guardian listed the book as among the 10 best brainy books of the decade. Bill Gates ranked Sapiens among his 10 favorite books, and Mark Zuckerberg also recommended it. The book was appreciated and recommended by Barack Obama in an interview with Fareed Zakaria. Summary and my comments. Harari's work situates its account of human history within a framework. He sees the natural sciences as setting the limits of the possibility of human activity, and he sees the social sciences as shaping what happens within those bounds. The academic discipline of history is the account of cultural change. Harari surveys the history of humankind from the Stone Age up to the 21st century, focusing on Homo sapiens, whom he separates from other humanoid species like Homo erectus or Homo neanderthalis. He divides the history of sapiens into 4 major parts. Firstly, the cognitive revolution, which began about 70,000 years ago when sapiens evolved imagination. The agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago, the development of agriculture, the unification of humankind 2,000 years ago, the gradual consolidation of human political organization towards one global empire. The scientific revolution 200 years ago, the emergence of objective science. Harari's main argument is that sapiens came to dominate the world, that we sapiens came to dominate the world because we are the only animal that can cooperate flexibly in large numbers. He argues that prehistoric sapiens were a key cause of the extinction of human species such as the Neanderthals, along with numerous other megafauna. At this time, I'm going to use a speech which Yuval Noah Harari himself gave at a gathering in London. He's very lucid, and therefore I thought that by repeating it here, I can get you the essence of the first part of his book. The speech has been edited by me for language, but not for content. The speech, and I quote, 70,000 years ago, our ancestors were insignificant animals. The most important thing to know about prehistoric humans is that they were unimportant. Their impact on the world was not much greater than that of, say, jellyfish or fireflies or woodpeckers. Today, in contrast, we control this planet. The question is, how did we come from there to here? How did we turn ourselves from insignificant apes minding their own business in a corner of Africa into rulers of the planet Earth? It is instinctive that in looking for differences between us and other animals, we try to find them on an individual level. I want to believe that there is something special about me, about my body, about my brain that makes me superior to the dog or the pig or the chimpanzee. But the truth is that on an individual level, I'm embarrassingly similar to a chimpanzee. And if you take me and a chimpanzee and put us together on some lonely island, and we had to struggle for survival to see who survives better, I would definitely place my bet on the chimp, not on myself. And this is not something wrong with me personally. I guess if they took almost any one of you and placed you alone with a chimp on some island, the chimp would do much better. The real difference between humans and all other animals is not on the individual level. It is on the collective level. Humans control the planet because they are the only animal that can cooperate both flexibly and in very large numbers. Now, there are other animals like social insects, the bees, the ants that can cooperate in large numbers, but they don't do so flexibly. There's basically just one way in which a beehive can function. And if there's a new opportunity or a new danger, the bees cannot reinvent the social system overnight. They cannot, for example, execute the queen and establish a republic of bees or a communist dictatorship of worker bees. Other animals, like social mammals, a pack of wolves, and herd of elephants, a school of dolphins, and a group of chimpanzees do cooperate, and much more flexibly at that. But they do so only in small numbers, because cooperation among them is based on intimate knowledge of one another. The only animal that can combine the two abilities together, cooperate both flexibly and still do so in very large numbers, is us Homo sapiens. 1 versus 1 or even 10 versus 10 chimps. 1 versus 1 or even 10 versus 10 chimps might do better than us. But if you pit 1,000 humans against 1,000 chimpanzees, the humans will win easily, for the simple reason that 1,000 chimps cannot cooperate at all. And if you now try to cram 100,000 chimpanzees into Oxford Street or Wembley Stadium or Tiananmen Square or the Vatican, you will get chaos, complete chaos. Just imagine Wembley Stadium with 100,000 chimpanzees, complete madness. On the other hand, humans usually gather there in tens of thousands. And normally, what we get is not chaos. What we get is extremely sophisticated and effective networks of cooperation. All the huge achievements of humankind throughout history, whether it's building the pyramids or flying to the moon, all have been based on not on individual abilities, but on this ability to cooperate flexibly and in large numbers. Think even about this very talk which I'm giving now. Harari says, I'm standing here in front of an audience of about 300 to 400 people. Most of you are complete strangers to me. Similarly, I don't really know all the people who have organized and worked on this event, or the pilots and drivers who have got us here, nor do I know the people who invented and manufactured this microphone and these cameras, or the people who wrote all the books and articles that I read in preparation for this talk. And I certainly don't know all the people who might be watching this talk over the internet, somewhere in, say, Buenos Aires or in New Delhi. Nevertheless, even though we don't know each other, we can work together to create this global exchange of ideas. This is something chimpanzees cannot do. They cannot they can communicate, of course, but you will never catch a chimp traveling to some distant chimpanzee band to give them a lecture about bananas or elephants or anything else that might interest chimpanzees. Now, cooperation is, of course, not always nice. All the horrible things humans have been doing throughout history, and we have been doing some very horrible things. All those things are also based on large-scale cooperation. Prisons are a system of cooperation. Slaughterhouses are a system of cooperation. Concentration camps are a system of cooperation. Chimpanzees don't have slaughterhouses and prisons and concentration camps. Now, suppose I have managed to convince you, perhaps, that yes, we control the world because we can cooperate flexibly in large numbers. The next question that immediately arises in all our minds is, how exactly do we do it? What enables us alone of all the animals to cooperate in such a way? The answer is our imaginations. We can cooperate flexibly with countless number of strangers because we alone of all the animals on the planet can create and believe stories, fictional stories. And as long as everybody believes in the same fiction, everybody obeys and follows the same rules, the same norms, and the same values, we can cooperate. All other animals use their communication system only to describe a reality. A chimpanzee might say, look, there's a lion, let's run away. Or look, there's a banana tree over there, let's go and get bananas. Humans, in contrast, use their language not merely to describe reality, but also to create new realities, fictional realities. A human can say, look, there is a God above the clouds. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, when you die, God will punish you and send you to hell. And if everyone believed this invented story, then they would follow the same norms and laws and values, and these humans will then cooperate. This is something only humans can do. You can never convince a chimp to give you a banana by promising him after you die, you will go to chimpanzee heaven and you will receive lots and lots of bananas for your good deeds. So now give me this banana. No chimp will ever believe such a story. Only humans believe such stories, which is why we control the world, whereas the chimpanzees are locked up in zoos and research laboratories. At this point, you may find it acceptable that yes, in the religious fields, humans cooperate by believing in the same fictions. Millions of people come together to build a cathedral or a mosque or fight a crusade or a jihad because they all believe in the same stories about God and heaven and hell. But what I want to emphasize is that exactly the same mechanism underlies all other forms of mass-scale human cooperation, not only the religious field. Take, for example, the legal field. Most legal systems today in the world are based on belief in human rights. But what are human rights? What are human rights? Just like God and heaven are just a story that we've invented. They are not objective reality. They're not some biological effect about Homo sapiens. Take a human being, cut him open, look inside, and you will find the heart, the kidneys, the neurons, hormones, DNA, but you won't find any rights. The only place you'll find rights are in the stories that we have invented and spread around over the last few centuries. They may be very positive stories, very good stories, but they're still just fictional stories and that we've invented. The same is true of the political field. The most important factors in modern politics are states and nations and countries. But what are the states and nations? They are not objective reality. A mountain is an objective reality. It is an object, one can see, one can touch it, one may even smell it. But a nation or a state like Israel or Iran or France or Germany, this is just a story we've invented and have become extremely attached to. The same is true of the economic field. The most important actors today in the global economy are companies and corporations. Many of you today perhaps work for corporations like Google or Toyota or McDonald's. What exactly are these things? They are what lawyers call legal fictions. They are stories invented and maintained by powerful wizards we call lawyers. And what do corporations do all day? Mostly, they try to make money. Yet, what is money? Again, money is not an objective reality. It has no objective value. Take this green piece of paper, the dollar bill. Look at it. It has no value. You can't eat it. You can't drink it. You can't wear it. But then came along the master storytellers, the big bankers, the finance minister, the prime minister. They tell us, very convincing story. Look, they say, you see this green piece of paper? It's actually worth 10 bananas. And if I believe it, and you believe it, and everybody believes it, it actually works. I can take this worthless piece of paper, go to the supermarket, give it to a complete stranger whom I've never met before, and get in exchange real bananas, which I can actually eat. This is something amazing. You could never do it with chimpanzees. Chimpanzees trade, of course. Yes, you give me a coconut, I'll give you a banana. That can work. But you give me a worthless piece of paper and you expect me to give you a banana? No way. What do you think I am? A human? Money, in fact, is the most successful story ever invented and told by humans because it is the only story everybody believes in. Not everybody believes in God. Not everybody believes in human rights. Not everybody believes in nationalism, but everybody believes in money and in the dollar bill. Take even Osama bin Laden. He hated American politics, American religion, American culture, but he had no objection to American dollars. He was actually quite fond of them. To conclude then, we humans control the world because we live in a dual reality. All other animals live in an objective reality. Their reality consists of objective entities like rivers and trees and lions and elephants. We humans, we also live in an objective reality. In our world too, there are the same objects, rivers and trees and lions and elephants. But over the centuries, we have constructed on top of these objective realities a second layer of fictional realities, a reality made of fictional entities like nations, like gods, like money, like corporations. And what is amazing is that as history has unfolded, this fictional reality has become more and more powerful. So that today, the most powerful forces in the world are these fictional entities. Today, the very survival of rivers and trees and lions and elephants depends on the decisions and wishes of fictional entities like the United States, like Google, like World Bank, entities that exist only in our own imagination. Unquote. This here ends his speech. I hope that the speech was very interesting, and that is why I used it here, because I think it gives you a very good idea of how this book starts. So the first chapter of the book, here we have covered the first part of the book, the part about the cognitive revolution beginning 70,000 years ago. There are still 3 more parts of this book, but for paucity of time, I shall not be covering them in such detail, but I will cover them briefly. So let's move on. Moving on, the agricultural revolution beginning 12,000 years ago. Harari's key claim regarding the agricultural revolution is that while it was instrumental in promoting population growth for sapiens and also played a pivotal role in the promotion of co-evolving species like wheat and cows, it made the lives of most individuals and animals worse than they had been when the sapiens were mostly hunter-gatherers. This feels contradictory to what most of us have been brought up to believe. It's true that agriculture did help us settle down into villages and cities and to provide an abundance of food. But what is obvious is that it introduced us to an unhealthy diet as compared with that of the hunter-gatherers, of course, and it made our daily lives less varied. Harari even estimates that whereas the hunter-gatherers had an approximate work week of less than 30 hours, the early agriculturists put in over 90 to 100 hours a week. It was indeed the beginning of the daily grind. Humans' violent treatment of other animals, he points out, has its roots in agriculture. The violence against other animals, which has caused several of them to become extinct, is another theme that runs through the book. Not to mention exploitation of women who have been constantly discriminated against. Is this discrimination and exploitation objective or real? Let us see what Harari has to say about it. And here I'm going to read you a passage from the book. I'm going to read a couple of passages from the book only because to show you that Harari's style is very simple. although the book seems complicated, the subject seems very complex, his style of writing is very simple. And so let me read this part. Is the division into men and women a product of the imagination, like the caste system in India and the racial system in America? Or is it a natural division with deep biological roots? And if it is indeed a natural division, are there also biological explanations for the preference given to men over women? Some of the cultural, legal, and political disparities between men and women reflect the obvious biological differences between the sexes. Childbearing has always been a woman's job because men don't have wombs. Yet, around this hard universal kernel, every society accumulated layer upon layer of cultural ideas and norms that have little to do with biology. Societies associate a host of attributes with masculinity and femininity that, for the most part, lack a firm biological basis. For instance, in democratic Athens of the 5th century BC, an individual possessing a womb had no independent legal status and was forbidden to participate in popular assemblies or be a judge. With few exceptions, such an individual could not benefit from a good education, nor engage in business or in philosophical discourse. None of Athens' political leaders, none of its great philosophers, orators, artists, or merchants had a womb. Does having a womb make a person unfit biologically for these professions? The ancient Athenians thought so. Modern Athenians disagree. In present-day Athens, women vote, are elected to public office, make speeches, design everything from jewelry to buildings to software, and go to the university. Their wombs do not keep them from doing any of these things as successfully as men do. So you've seen a style, it's pretty simple. Anyway, let's move on. Harari then continues to show us how such discrimination, not only of women, but blacks, lower castes, and differently sexually oriented folks, only entered a vicious circle and got worse over the millennia, perpetuating an imagined hierarchy. Money comes to money, poverty to poverty, education comes to education, and ignorance to ignorance. The chapter on agricultural revolution is replete with very interesting examples and continues to show us a mirror to many of our present day beliefs. But I will not dwell on that anymore, and I shall move on to the next chapter on the unification of humankind. Presently, we are all going towards a unified globe with the whole, all humanity trying to work in one direction. In this chapter, Harari shows us how common objectives, and particularly money, have slowly moved sapiens to start working with one another on a global scale. In discussing the unification of humankind, Harari argues that over its history, the trend for sapiens has increasingly been towards political and economic independence. For centuries, the majority of humans lived in empires, and capitalist globalization is effectively producing one global empire. Harari argues that money, empires, and universal religions are the principal drivers of this process. Here is Harari's own way of introducing us to money and credit, which played a pivotal role, more so credit than just money. So this is a chapter, this part is a little bit about economics. Again, simple example, simple narration helps anybody understand. So this book is that way, it's easy to understand. It just has so much depth in it that often you need to go through it again to make sure what he's exactly trying to say at the end of giving you all this simple narration. Let me start reading it. Money has been essential both for building empires and for promoting science. Neither modern armies nor university laboratories can be sustained without banks. Economics is a notoriously complicated subject. To make things easier, let's imagine a simple example. Samuel Greedy, a good name for a banker, a shrewd financier, founds a bank in El Dorado, California. A. Stone, again his name for a contractor, an up-and-coming contractor in El Dorado, finishes his first big job, receiving payment in cash to the tune of $1 million. He deposits the sum in Mr. Greedy's bank. The bank now has $1 million in capital. In the meantime, Jane McDonald, an experienced but impecunious El Dorado chef, thinks she has a business opportunity. There's no really good bakery in her part of town, but she doesn't have enough money of her own to buy a proper facility complete with industrial ovens, sinks, knives, and pots. She goes to the bank, presents her business plan to Greedy, and persuades him that it's a worthwhile investment. He issues her a $1 million loan by crediting her account to the bank with that sum. McDonald now hires Stone, the contractor, to build and furnish her bakery. His price, another $1 million. When she pays him with a check drawn on her account, Stone deposits it in his account in Greedy's bank, and Greedy promptly credits it. So how much money does Stone have in his bank account? Right, $2 million. How much money cash is actually located in the bank safe? Yes, $1 million. It doesn't stop there. Current US banking laws permit the bank to repeat this exercise 7 times, 8 times more. The contractor would eventually have $10 million in his account, even though the bank still has but $1 million in its vaults. Banks are allowed to loan $10 for every dollar they actually possess, which means that 90% of all the money in our bank accounts is not covered by actual coins and notes. It sounds like a giant Ponzi scheme, doesn't it? But if it's a fraud, then the entire modern economy is a fraud. In the bakery example, the discrepancy between the contractor's account statement and the amount of money actually in the bank is Miss McDonald's bakery. Mr. Greedy has put the bank's money into the asset, trusting that one day it would be profitable. The bakery hasn't baked a loaf of bread yet, but McDonald and Greedy anticipate that a year hence, it will be selling thousands of loaves, rolls, cakes, and cookies each day at a handsome profit. Mrs. McDonald will then be able to repay her loan with interest. If at that point, Mr. Stone decides to withdraw his savings, Greedy will be able to come up with the cash. Okay, so that was about the unification, and this chapter on unification is something all of us will relate to. However, it is important to note that it has not always been so. It's not that, you see, now that we work towards a unified world, we think that the world always functioned like that, but it wasn't like that. Money, empires, and universal religions have been instrumental in driving it towards this unification. The next is the chapter on the scientific revolution. This part of the book is actually quite intriguing, very interesting also. The first part is very interesting, and the last part is very interesting. The middle two parts have got good examples, but it's not the most interesting part of the book. So moving on to the last chapter, scientific revolution started 200 years ago. In this chapter, Harari uses the 200 years of this revolution to extrapolate the possibilities of the future. Harari sees the scientific revolution as founded on innovation in European thought, whereby elites in Europe became willing to admit to and hence to try and remedy their ignorance. Until the scientific revolution 200 years ago, it was believed that the scriptures and the past generations knew whatever there was to know, and studies were made only to unearth this knowledge. It was only around this time, just 200 years ago, that the elite and the learned in Europe started admitting their ignorance. And this opened the floodgates of scientific discovery, which has made sapiens deadly and super powerful. However, the early stages of this scientific discovery, the first 100 years or so, Harari sees as one of the drivers of early modern European imperialism and of the current convergence of the human cultures. Other achievements in the present in the scientific revolution are obvious. Now moving to the future. For close to 4 billion years, every organism developed according to the rules of evolution. But in recent decades, humans have begun to evolve according to intelligent design. In other words, there would be a natural selection of people who would have been selected out of a gene pool a millennia ago, but not today. Genetic engineering is allowing humans to break the laws of natural selection. In other words, humans are on the verge of becoming gods. They can create a species if they wanted to. The next stage of scientific revolution in human history will not only involve biological and technological changes, but also changes in human consciousness and identity. Changes that are so fundamental and profound that they will call the very term human into question. At this point, Harari raises the fundamental issue of human happiness. We have to see where are we going. So let us say that happiness is the goal. So at this point, Harari raises the fundamental issue of human happiness. Harari emphasizes the lack of research into the history of happiness. If happiness is based on pleasurable feelings, then increasing our happiness is a matter of increases in biochemical releases. If happiness is based on meaning, then increasing our happiness is a matter of deluding ourselves about the meaning of our lives. Many people think the question we should ask to guide the future of scientific revolution is, what do we want to become? However, because we seem to be on a path to genetically engineering and programming nearly every facet of our wants, desires, and consciousness, the real question we should ask is, what do we want to want? In the past 1,000 years, humans have evolved to take over the world and are on the verge of overcoming natural selection and becoming gods. Yet, we still seem unhappy in many ways, and we are unsure of what we want. Is there anything more dangerous than dissatisfied and irresponsible gods who don't know what they want? Thank you. I'll now open the floor for question and answers.
Okay, I think you can have this. That's it. Let's take it from there. Ravi, a very good presentation, very interesting. I just have to, there's something, what you said in the last paragraph.
Yes.
I read about it somewhere or the other, and I said I would read it out to you. It is the human being has become the animal that became a god. We mastered our surroundings, increased food production, built tall buildings, empires, far-flung trade network, etc., etc. But did it bring well-being to all, not just to individuals? This has been a question which has been asked by this guy regularly at every meeting of his. What have we done for happiness? That's the one thing that is, you mentioned it. It's not been there.
Okay, so this book just ends on this note.
Yes, exactly.
Because where he says that we haven't done enough research on happiness, and because we haven't done enough research on happiness, we really don't know what we want, or at least we don't know what we want to want. So let's say longevity we want, we got it. We want leisure, we got it. Now people probably will not have to work to earn their living. Even that probably we will go through. I mean, looking at the exponential curve, within the next 50, 70 years, all of this will be reality. But where are we headed? What do we want?
Exactly.
Okay, so now the thing is that I'm not going to go into this topic with this book, because there's another book which Harari has written, which is called Homo Deus. That is when
God
beings become gods. And
exactly, I've taken that thing from it, that
right.
have we become gods? That's what we are.
So this is not this book. So I'm not going to be tempted into debating this at this point of time, because that's another book. And if you like, I'll present it at some point of time. But
3 months down the line.
Here
3 months down the line, Moini, 3 months or 4 months. Ravi, we have got a waiting list of 3 months or 4 months.
Yeah, so very good. In 6 months' time, I'll present the next.
Great, we're holding you up to that. But you know,
we look forward to that.
This animal that was us, the Homo sapiens, we have destroyed everyone else around there. That's what I feel most that nature has been ruined completely because of us.
Right.
People, the bird species, the animal species have gone haywire. We have, and look at the, this cows for meat, etc. Genetically, they have been ruined. The chickens have been gone haywire. So this, you feel that mankind has not thought further on, or there has not been control of mankind at all.
No, absolutely. We've started first with our fellow human beings. So there were other humanoids, the Neanderthals, the Homo erectus. We first destroyed them so that we could become more dominant amongst whatever we were. But then, you can see the facts. Take the big animals in America. All the big animals in both North and South America put together, all of them have disappeared.
Yeah.
They are all extinct. The day humans entered Australia, all the big animals in Australia disappeared. So the thing is that we have collectively, and through imagination or whatever, we have just destroyed whatever we felt was a challenge to us.
And it is still going on. It is still going on.
Yes, and this goes on. You see, the thing is that you get more and more troubled by smaller and smaller things, and you destroy more and more things to try and believe that things are going to get better. But the fact is that we've done it, and we are here. See, the thing I liked about this book basically is that it takes us very logically, especially the part where he moves us from hunter-gatherers to agriculturists. In that period, when we were moving around, we were doing a fairly good job. We did fight animals, we did kill animals and so on, but it was not on a mass scale. It was only after the agricultural revolution started, and let's say 12,000, 14,000 years ago, that we started trying to exploit things around us. Yeah. Agriculture, in a way, was organized exploitation of land, of wheat. For instance, in the book, he also mentions how wheat got completely destroyed. I mean, it was spoiled because it was mass produced.
But do you know, just about wheat, let me put it down. We did not domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us.
Yeah, yes. Well,
it's the other way around.
Well, yes. Yeah, he says that's true too. And all of us are fighting obesity today because of the wheat domesticating us. It's absolutely.
Okay, everyone. Otherwise, I can go. We can go on and on talking about with each other. I would like you all guys to raise your hand, come forward, and say what you would like to say about it, because this is your tomorrows. What we are talking about, and we have to give it a thought. And that's why I would request Dr. Bharucha, come on, please come on the line and tell us what is happening to nature.
Thank you. I talk about nature, of course, but it's very interesting. It's a very, very nice book because I read it a couple of years ago. And it brought to me, as a surgeon, as a doctor, as well as understanding biology, biodiversity, and history, bringing those kind of things together, it brought me closer to a realization of we are a very strange and very special species. Though we are mammals and though we are primates, there are these characteristics that we have had, which evolution has produced, which makes us different. And perhaps that's why we start thinking that we can play God, which is absolutely untrue. And that's where nature comes in. You can't play God with nature. Nature, God. What I always taught this to my students quite a few years ago, and I was quite surprised when several authors are mimicking that, are talking about the same thing now. Harari, Sunil Sanyal. These are people who somehow had parallel thoughts with me. And I taught my medical students always in one of my first talks as to why we are special. What is it that makes you different? And it's obviously our incredible human brain, which far is in excess of even a chimpanzee, which is probably in a way the closest to us. But he does have a lot of thinking processes. And I mean, Jane Goodall found how chimps started using instruments and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of similarity with us. We're very, very close to them. We had two monkeys for many years living with us in our house. And that was when I learned from them how close they are to us. Mm-hmm. The same sort of behavioral characteristics that Chico and Pippa had were there in me and my family. Mm-hmm. That's the incredible brain which we have had. But there are three other things. One is our psychomotor skills. And because of an opposing thumb, which we are far in excess of for the chimpanzee also, knows it very well and we can control it very well, but that's again the brain. Mm-hmm. That's what the psychomotor skill does. To release that ability and use that ability, we became biped. Right. Now, how did evolution do that? And finally, probably the most important thing that evolution did was using our mind for a much more complex speech than any other animal had. That's communication. Right. And what Harari talks about, he talks about this cooperation thing, which comes about because we had all these four things together. Right. No other species. Dolphins have a good communication skills. Whales have good communication skills. We know that today. Motor skills, the chimp is pretty good at it. He's not bad at it. He's pretty good at it. A biped. But there are many other bipeds. They don't have the skills, and they don't have the brain. Similarly, the speech. I mean, we have birds giving a whole lot of different kinds of calls. But they don't have a brain or hands to do. They use their wings for flight. So these four things coming together, one species, has always surprised me very much. And really what comes out of those four things coming together is our ability to go beyond communication skills into a completely different world. Right. But that is the imagination, right? What he said. Yes, it's imagination or inventiveness. That's right. This crazy sort of inventiveness that we have. Right, right. None of the other species have. So we are special, but we are not God. Right. Play God. Nature is God.
Nature is God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Samir, you're coming there for the first time. what do you have to say?
Usha Pasi has written something in the chat box.
Yes, she has. She has given, someone has given us, Usha Pasi has given a link to a New York thing. I've copied it and I will send it onto the book club notice board. I've taken it down. Okay, but what do you have to say, Samir?
Samir, you can unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, please. Yes, now you can talk. No.
Again, you're muted.
Again,
Yeah.
so you're muted still, Samir.
Now?
Yeah, you can
Yes,
speak.
go ahead.
But we are also now realizing that we are part of this whole ecosystem. And that thinking has also come in, that we cannot fiddle with all these things. So maybe that is also a hope that we will go in the right direction.
No,
About
see,
playing God.
Samir, आपके
Yeah.
मुंह में घी शक्कर. It's completely the other way around. You ask Dr. Bharocha, ask me how much fight we have to do to try to save a little patch of green that we see and around. We are finding it difficult to save that also.
But that realization, I suppose, is, it is a seed which has come in maybe very late, but I hope that it will pick up and it will move. I mean, that's a hope.
Actually, I had a lot of hope because I thought that, during COVID, when we shut down, we saw nature come back so fiercely. And I think it shows that it's not going to take that long if we really make up our minds to do the right thing. It's not as negative as one might believe it is.
Yeah, plants, they can grow anywhere and they recover fast. They do come back very, very fast. You leave a plot for 6 months and it will be overgrown. But the only thing is we don't want to leave a plot empty.
Yes, exactly. So you want concrete everywhere. You don't want the jungle. You want a concrete jungle. Shanti, you have something to say.
You touched upon what the book is about. What were some of the critiques of the book?
Okay, the critiques of the book are basically, first thing is, in 500 pages, you cannot write the history of humankind, which is obvious. So because of that, what has happened is that first of all, Harari has not done any research himself in this history, or he has not really worked on the history himself. He has just picked up, the book is full of quotes from different historians or different history books. Now, people say that he has cherry-picked these particular examples which he is given. These are, so he might have not really, whatever suits his way of thinking or whatever his strain in this book, which is imagination and cooperation and so on and so forth. So he has used examples of those. So, for example, I give you an example about Athens and the Greeks there and so on and so forth. So this kind of example picking, which he has done, and he's very, he just picks one up and he says, well, that's the way it is. He doesn't even acknowledge that there is dialogue about this or that. So he writes, his style of writing is very, what can I say, disdainful, just that.
Aggressive.
You take it or leave it. This is what I think, that's been his style. So that has offended a lot of people. Another thing that's a big challenge, and I think I must have read over 500 reviews of this book just to get an idea of what people feel about it. And most of the people who oppose that book are people who are religious, because this thinking actually does challenge religions in various ways. So there are people who say that, for example, that the second ice age was actually a flood and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of theories which go into that. And so they say that this is not really the whole story. There is a whole lot of other story behind this and so on. So there is a whole lot of religious stuff, which people who will say that everything said in this book is wrong because it doesn't fit with the religious text. But then that's Harari's main stand. But Harari acknowledges that religions played an important role in the world, in the evolution process, in getting the world together and so on and so forth. So other than that, basically, I have not seen people say very many things, especially anthropologists. They think that this is just a piece of junk, because as an anthropologist, they want purity in what he has written, but he hasn't done that. So there's a critique in this
Yeah,
fashion.
I haven't read the book, but I'm, from what you presented, I get the feeling it's very Eurocentric in its orientation.
Yes.
No, that's
very
and
correct. I also brought it around. There's not much talk about the eastern part of the world at all.
Well, it's not like that. That particular speech that I used as a major part of my presentation was given in London, and therefore the examples and etc. were from that area. But if you look at the book itself, it talks a lot about Africa, a lot about the movement across Asia and Australia and so on and so forth. And Harari himself is a big believer of Vipassana. And so he has a little Buddhist trend to him. And so it's actually him. So if you have to read the book, you will find it's more based around him, and he's from Israel. So he's definitely not very European oriented. He's a very global person in that sense. But you have to read the book. I mean, it is really, you can't put it down.
Okay, just let me come in the middle. Usha Pasi, you have given me a link. Can you give it to me by email so I can send it out into our book club members so they can see?
I will send it to you on. I will copy it and send it to you on WhatsApp. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you can also do the same, Usha. Okay.
No, I'll just send it to you on WhatsApp. Just.
Okay, done. Kaveri, where are you, Kaveri? You're very quiet somewhere or the other. Come on. There you are.
This has such a broad sweep, this particular book. I was just absorbing it all.
I know it is.
Yeah. And I found the questions also very interesting. The questions and discussions that came after that, I thought was very interesting.
Farooq has raised his hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this Sonal Ravi. Does this mean that now we should have a happiness revolution? We had the industrial revolution 200 years ago, and now we should invent a happiness revolution. Because in the industry revolution, we are now talking about industry 4.0.
Right.
We should start something like happiness revolution 1.0 and start looking at nature, plastic, water, and then maybe in the next 200 years, we'll have humans, Homo sapiens of 200 years ago saying, thank God in 2021, we had this book club and people thought about happiness revolution.
No, but I very much support this concept of a human happiness revolution is coming through. But what they've been linking, when I read Harari's other books, they're linking it along with the AI that is going to come through, which will have that as the major stake in that. Read his book upon AI,
right?
Then you'll see this. It brings it there. I was about to ask you the same thing about AI.
No, he doesn't talk about AI because this book is actually he wrote it in 2011 in Hebrew. But if you take his own thought process forward, you take it forward, then you will say that, okay, we now need to decide what we want. You see, the Industrial Revolution came about because we thought that we should produce goods easily and in plenty.
Yes.
That's what brought, so that was the human thought. Now, if the next human thought is that we should have happiness, then what Harari says is that the human beings are capable of taking you there, wherever, but you got to decide. The first one was easy, that, okay, we want more food because we need food to survive. We need more goods and services. And so Industrial Revolution came about. That got organized. That has got organized to a large extent. And there will be something else. It may not happen in apna 15-20 saal mein to kuch nahi hoga, but shayad at one point things like this will happen. And you have to understand that, because the common example that everybody gives here of artificial intelligence and humans playing God is the programming of the self-driven vehicle.
Yes.
When a self-driven vehicle is being programmed by an engineer, he has to make up his mind. Let's say he's programming the vehicle and he sees a pedestrian coming across. Let's say 2 small kids are crossing the road. Then there is a decision to be made by the car, whether it will kill those kids or perhaps go down into a valley when the owner who is sitting at the back will have to die. So this is a decision the car will have to make. And the car doesn't make these decisions. These are the software engineer who writes the program makes
exactly.
this decision. So obviously, that's when he talks about playing God. When we talk about playing God, it's not that God will make nature or will recreate nature or whatever, but we will make decisions which we thought God made for us. So this is where that comes from.
Okay, we had 2 people wanting to say something. V.S. Ram wanted to. V.S. rang me up. You said hi there. You said. Okay.
And there's Priyana would like to say something.
See, he has said, V.S., are you there? I don't think he's there. He said he had to leave early. That's what he told me. Okay. V.S. Ram is from IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta, classmate of mine. He thanks you for an excellent presentation, summarizing a fascinating book. Yuval Harari questions and makes us think many assumptions that we have about humans and our place in the universe. He's read the book over 2 years ago, and today's session helped him revisit it. And that's exactly what is happening to me. I read it about 2-3 years back, maybe even more, 4-5 years back. And suddenly everything is coming alive and I'm made myself a whole page full of points that I would like to make. And now others. Farooq, Priya, do you have anything to say?
Priyana, yes. Priyana?
Yes. So
and,
like Mr. Merchant said.
So Priya, Mukul, and one more, and of course,
Dr. Bharucha.
Dr. Bharucha. Okay.
Yes. So I was saying, as Mr. Merchant said earlier, we need a happiness revolution. I think more than a happiness revolution, what we need is a satisfaction revolution. We need to be satisfied with where we are, because the constant greed that the humankind has started to develop is getting so extreme at certain points that it is harming the humankind itself. It's not just about the nature and environment that is getting harmed, definitely, but it's even the humankind themselves. So I think more than being happy, it's more about trying to find a ground where you say, okay, this much is enough. We can satisfy ourselves at this level and be happy at this point, because only then can you create this sort of balance, is what I feel.
So actually, this is what he has covered in his next book. And like I said, that next book, Homo Deus, is when humans are making these decisions which we thought God was making for us. At that time, we need to make them so that we meet the parameters that you are laying down. For example, if you are saying that we should be doing only those things which are enough for satisfaction, then if the human race decides that that's what we should be doing, that's where the human race will get to. I doubt that will happen though. What we'll do the next book, and at that time, but I would recommend all of you to not only read this book, but also read his next book, which is also fascinating in itself.
Okay, Priya?
Yeah, she
Please.
spoke. Right. Now,
Priya spoke. Mukul?
Dr. Bharucha? Yes.
Mukul has been raising a hand.
You know, the first two revolutions that you mentioned, the agricultural and industrial, were tangible. We knew where we were going, what purpose we had. When you talk about happiness as a revolution, as some you did, for each one of us, it's something different. So I think what the lady just before me, the young lady said, a certain satisfaction with what we have is much more tangible. I mean, for example, I just make it very personal. Anything that moves on 4 wheels, doesn't have to be a sedan or a Lexus. I don't even know how to spell those words. It's absolutely okay for me. It gets me somewhere. So I'm not moved by somebody who has a huge big car. I'm not being virtuous. I'm just saying for each one of us, it's different. Therefore, how can we make one blanket statement to say that we should have collectively something called satisfaction? Though, of course, in Japan, there are young people now experimenting with minimalism, where they live with absolutely basic things in their one wooden kind of barsati kind of thing. So I mean, that's the setting a standard for the intangible is really, I mean.
No, that's what he says in the book also.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it also, that enough research has not been done on happiness.
Yeah, okay.
So it is, I understand what you're saying about it being individual, but there are a lot of things which are individual and personal, which we have now been able to collectively meet the targets of. So, for example, you talked about mobility. So mobility was something that we all wanted. So we headed towards a particular direction and we achieved whatever mobility we wanted. Now, the same way, there would be something for happiness, which it may be different for different people, but there needs to be research. Unless we do scientific research and study the subject of happiness in a scientific manner, I don't think, because the humankind has so far not worried about it, thinking that, oh, that's something that will come.
I think we have an example. All of us need to look at Bhutan and what they're doing. Their GN happiness is the best in the world, and we can take lessons from there. So,
Yes.
so you know, I mean, then what
It's
is
happening.
it that they are doing that we are not doing? You know, and at least in India, we keep harping on our ancient culture and this and that. So why aren't we drawing something from there to make us currently happy? Is a question I always ask myself. You know. Yeah, because we keep saying we had interventions and invasions and they took our happiness away and stuff like that. I mean, surely today we can draw upon its simplicity and its Hinduism's nuances without all the shosha that is, you know, substituting, you know. I mean, this is one example I would like to give, you know.
Yeah. I agree with you thoroughly. It gives you a sense of calmness when you're down there. There's no hurry. There's nothing rushing and pushing there. Sit down quietly, drink your milk. What do you call the tea? Forgotten the name of it. But drink your tea and watch the world go by. It's a fantastic.
It's called Shuja.
Shuja. Okay. Dr. Bharucha, you are there. After Doctor, I have someone called Marcel. But basically it is someone called Padgaonkar. Not Marcel or Padgaonkar. After you, Airaj.
Oh, Marcel. Okay.
After me. Yeah, thank you for getting me in the second time. A little embarrassing for me. The first thing is you mentioned Bhutan, which was very, very interesting. I had a bunch of senior administrators and judiciary from Bhutan coming to my institute and having a course on environment and so on and so forth. And I said, oh, tell us about this joyousness of yours and this happiness of yours. And they said, Dr. Saab, you have to take it with a very big pinch of salt.
I thought so.
I mean, we need to look at what happiness really means.
Yeah, so
that's call it joy or joyousness. It's a little different feeling from just being happy.
Yes.
That comes from accepting that you don't need to use resources the way we actually do them. But I must also point out that many of us who talk about this don't really do this. Many of us will do it in some ways, but always have some Achilles heel. And therefore, we can't all be Mahatma Gandhis. So the question is, how do we get this joyousness? And to me, that joyousness comes from sitting in a forest or sitting in a wetland. That's it. Or sitting on a mountain. And to me, that is joyousness. Thanks.
Yes. Marcel, you're on next. Latika.
No, what Marcel, I'm with Marcel in Goa. This is Latika. But now that you've used the word Padgaonkar, let me ask something. You know, Mrs. Sonarkar, you spoke about hunter-gatherers, and then you spoke about settled communities. I would assume that when man settled down is when he started becoming inventive, becoming creative, and what genius there was in him to make every step of his life both simpler, more easy, and I suppose artistic also. All of that happened from the time he settled down, not when he was a hunter-gatherer. So all these 12,000 years, I guess, have been years of great advance, quote unquote. Man at the same time has also produced weapons of destruction. He's engaged in wars. So while he's creative, that genius is both creative and destructive. Now you come up to today, and for the first time, I get the feeling, but I don't know if this is mentioned in the book that was only 2011, and things have changed in the last 10 years. I get the feeling very pessimistically, we've gone beyond the tipping point. And when the kind of allow us to distinguish fact from fiction, truth from reality, then truth from fake news or whatever, then, you know, we doubt ourselves, we doubt everyone around us. Where can we look for happiness? We don't know what is true, what is not true anymore. I wonder if this was the case in the same way earlier. Earlier, of course, there was also truth and lies. But today, truth and lies is every moment in our hands, and we don't know how to distinguish. So how do we even look for something called happiness? Leave aside something called peace.
This is definitely the challenge of his next book, and that's why Mrs. Padgaonkar, I'll take that up with the next book. Because in this book, you know, what you said was that when he moved from hunter-gatherer to agriculturist to, you know, this has been a whole big evolution. And there is a logical thinking strain which Harari uses right through this book. Now, if you get into that thinking, then you see where he thinks we are going to. And this is why this book is important, because it analyzes what happened over such a long period of time. Now, what will happen? If you want to predict that, you'll have to go back to history and get to know this book.
Hello, Rakesh. Just wondering whether we are truly, we have sown the seeds of our own destruction. You know, internally, mentally, emotionally, not to speak of otherwise. Which is why
I think that's
there are a lot of people who, I mean, I read a lot of reviews on this book, and there are a lot of people who feel that Harari is very pessimistic, and reading him kinds of brings about a lot of pessimism. Whereas some other people say that, oh, he is only showing a mirror to you, and therefore you feel pessimistic, then you might have actually caused yourself harm. So what you see, these are different ways of looking at this same scenario. I mean, each one will look at it from his or her perspective, and that's how it will be. I don't think that Harari also tries to Of course, Harari has a very, very strong mind, and he says something and he goes ahead with it. So his next book will probably tell us what he thinks, but it doesn't have to be true. It's just that that's his point of view.
I think there's one last question. Mukul, you'll have the last word here.
Yeah. Mr. Sonarkar, I want to ask you this question. You said during the lockdown, nature overtook, and it was, and in areas it became really beautiful. I did myself see lots of peacocks on Nagar Road.
Right.
So that in the normal course of things that wouldn't have happened. But how long can this sustain? I mean, don't you think in some way, where would we go then if nature came all over the place? If you're talking about an ideal, I'm asking you, not Harari. I'm asking you because you made this point. So if then we will have to retreat, and then how do you expect? I'm just saying that I agree with what Latika said, that it's in the last couple of years that things have become so bad. But other than that, I think things evolved the way invention allowed us to evolve, and we made use of it because we have minds. Animals are programmed only to do X number of things. They can't do anything beyond that. So I mean, to blame ourselves so much, I mean, yeah, if you say last 20 years or so, I accept that entirely, what with the multinationals and so on and so forth. But other than that, I wouldn't be so hard on humans because we also have to survive.
I think, 1 minute. Can I ask Dr. Bharocha to respond to that? Dr. Bharocha, please switch on the mic. Yeah, all right.
That's a bad one. That's a really bad one.
Yeah.
I would think of this as, we've got this ability to think things through and invent and really bring about new things which other species can't do. But we haven't had long-term thinking. We've always had a short-term, and therefore we've been quite unthinking. And so we call ourselves humankind, but we are humankind.
Unkind.
And that's a terrible thing to say for us.
We are part of it.
We are all part of that, and some ability to coexist always remains. So there is urban wildlife which you can sustain. I've got a family of civet cats which walks about on the TV cables, for example. Here I've got mongoose in my compound, and I live in Korega Park at the edge of the river, so I see the birds there. But that's urban wildlife, and that's what we should really encourage. And there is eco-restoration for urban areas where you can do this. We don't want certainly elephants and tigers and walking around in an urban area, and they normally don't. But you are right, during the early part of the pandemic, animals did adapt. A lot of leopards and some places tigers outside protected areas came out.
And bisons.
And gaur and whatever. Gaur I had in my own institute in the year 2000. So that happens. But that doesn't mean they're going to drive us out. I don't think. Look at the number. When you look at real numbers, the number of human kills, which is a terrible thing, by tigers is very, very, very small.
Agree.
People die on the roadside out of somebody driving.
But we're just many more.
We don't even talk about that. We talk about the tiger that took somebody's unfortunate life away. So I think we have to begin to realize what is it that we want. And that was the early question that came up here. What is it that we want? And want is again going back to Mahatmaji. It's not about greed. It's about what you can live with happily.
We want to go.
So I think those are things that we think about. Thanks.
Thank you. I think this is exactly what we're looking for, where everyone is willing to talk and give his opinion. And this is what the book club really thrives on and feels good. I'm feeling good that there's so many of us talking about it. And thanks to you, Ravi, you have got people so very interested in the whole thing. Thanks a lot. Mohini, to take over, and then Farooq, the last minute.
No, this was a fantastic session, I think. Ravi, thank you so much. I mean, a very important book, and you managed summarized it very neatly.
Yeah.
For those of us who haven't read it. So marvelous. I mean, throughout all the questions, I was intently listening. What concerns me is, in fact, all this evolution and progress and all that, but that so-called progress is harming the human race. That's what worries me tremendously. Anyway, so we had a lot of opinions being voiced. We had a discussion. It's been marvelous. Thank you very, very much. So thank you, Ravi. Thank you, all the others who participated, who asked questions, who offered opinions. Thank you very much. Now, before I hand over to Farooq, I'd just like to let you know what we have next time. So next Sunday is the 26th, and we thought, hey, this is Christmas, people will be holidaying, doing other things, possibly then talking about books. So be it. No session on the 26th, but on the 2nd of January, which will be our first session in the new year, we have this novel called Fahrenheit 451. Now, Mukul is nodding, so yes, she probably has read it. We have a 14-year-old girl presenting it. So I find that amazing. And I do remember that I was about that age when I read it, 50 years ago. So Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, which is one of those dystopian novels like 1984. Okay, so that's what we're going to have on that day. And on the 9th of January, we have Friana Munshi, who I think is here today, discussing a book called Anxious People by Frederick Backman. Okay, now I did say that Sapiens was available to download for free. I don't know if any of you did it, but it is there. Similarly, Fahrenheit 451 is also available like that as a PDF to download, and so is Anxious People. So how much easier could things be for us? It's
please send all these 3 downloads as soon as possible so that everyone can start reading them.
But they're there, Satish. They're on the net, very easily found. I found them. I'm the worst researcher. I found them. I'm sure everyone can.
If you can give us the URL, love, it'll make life simpler for us all.
Okay. Ma'am, also, for anxious people, there is actually, it's my luck, I think, on 29th December, Netflix is releasing an entire movie on anxious people.
Oh,
so if you really do not have the time to go through the entire book and have access to Netflix, you could just watch it there.
How about that? Brianna is the presenter, by the way. This is Brianna. She's an MA student. And she is presenting the book. And now you know that there's even a movie, folks, that you can watch from the Brianna, very, very precious.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so goodbye from me. This is the last session in 2021. We will meet again in 2022. And by the way, since the lockdown, we have had 85 sessions. This was the 85th since March 2020. So 85 rewarding books and discussions of them. Thank you, everyone, for making it happen. Farooq?
Thank you, Mohini. Thank you, Satish.
One minute. Before you all go away, I want to request all of you to go on our new website of GyaanAdab. I have put a whole new look on the GyaanAdab website.org. Please have a look at it. I also want to inform you that we have a WhatsApp group called Gyaanpedia. So that is something which Satish Khoth and Sandeep Prakash Bide, Mustafa, myself, we all thought about. We have a WhatsApp group called Gyaanpedia, which I think we should convert it into something for nature, environment, and all those things that Iraj Burucha and all of you work for. So if anybody would like to be part of Gyaanpedia, we will try to put all these articles and links that you are giving on these type of forums, we can put there, and then people can read those articles. Because I think a group discussion, people sharing on a WhatsApp group would be an interesting addition. So if you agree, then maybe I can put the link of Gyaanpedia in the book club things, and then people can join the Gyanpedia, the WhatsApp group. And on this note, Ravi, I would like to thank you on behalf of GyaanAdab and all of you who attended today. And so with your kind permission, we'll close the session. Satish.
Thank you.
And
Thank
wish
you very
you all
much.
a happy new year.
Bye. Happy New Year, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And happy
Happy New
reading,
Year.
as always.